Okay. Well, some years ago, my husband Scott and I hosted a holiday party for the members of we had a theatrical group, and they were called the Philco Radio Players. And what they did was old-time radio shows as theater, and the audience helped do the sound effects. So people would just have a ball with this, and they performed all over the place. But one of our members refused to come to the party because we called it a holiday party instead of a Christmas party. He was very indignant that we were dishonoring Christmas by calling it a holiday party, and he thought he was demeaned as a Christian. I thought that was a little weird. But then I heard the same thing from a man a minister on TV, and I just thought, wait a minute, we've got people with all kinds of faiths around this country. Why not just celebrate for everybody? We had members of our group that were Jewish, and I was impressed with their understanding and their willingness to show up in spite of this extra drama that this one member was doing. When I heard this other minister from his church in Texas mouthing the same bias, I just thought, Christmas is not the only celebration during the month of December. There are a lot more. I know I was searching for what is the candle thing that menorah. That was it. I went shopping for a menorah at one time in Christmas time, and everywhere else I saw Christmas, and to find something Jewish, all of this Christmas, I thought this little thing's out of balance. Because everywhere you look is Christmas, 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 Christmas. And we need to be honoring a little bit more of some of the other faith traditions that are coming up this month. Even among Christianity, there are many, many ways of celebrating the holidays, and they vary from country to country. So if you're in another country, it won't be the Christmas tradition that we're used to here, which kind of goes back to England and the immigrants brought that over. But there are many, many other celebrations that go on during this month of December, like I said, even in Christianity. One is called, if I can say it correctly, Lucia Dagen. And it's St. Lucia's Day, and it's celebrated in Denmark and Sweden. And I remember I met a lady from Sweden one time, and she was describing what this celebration was. And she was almost in tears. She said, I just miss it so much, because it was just such a dear holiday. St. Lucia's Day is also called the Festival of Lights. And according to legend, it was the shortest day of the year, when the darkness of winter was just beginning to give way to the light of spring. St. Lucia was born in the 3rd century in Syracuse during the time of the Roman Emperor Diocletian. It was said that she was a saint because of her kindness, and she died a martyr's death on December 13th, 304 AD. There are several stories about St. Lucia, which I found just very, very interesting. So let me share a few of them with you. The first is that she was to marry a man who was not a Christian. Women were supposed to bring a dowry with them when they wed. Lucia gave her dowry away to 4 Christians, and her betrothed informed the Romans that she was a Christian, and they came to kill her. They tried to drown her, and she lived. They tried to burn her, and that failed too. So finally, they ran her through with the sword. Another story tells how Lucia's Christian friends hid from the Romans in the catacombs. Has anybody been here to any of the catacombs? I've been to one. And have you been? Yeah, it's just fascinating. And I was in Italy back when I was about 18, and a farmer was working in his field, and suddenly the earth just opened, and he looked in, and you could see some of the tombs that were down there. And so I went through those, and they're very small and very dark, and you can imagine how rough it was for people celebrating down there in these very dark, small places, but it was the safest place for them during the time of the Roman Empire. It was when Lucia, went down to bring food to her friends, she carried as much food as she could down to the catacombs. In order to see in the extreme darkness, she fastened a candle in her hair so she could see where she was walking and still carry as much food as possible. A third story tells that Lucia had wondrously beautiful eyes. A prince fell in love with her. He was not Christian, and so she turned him down. To show her faith in God, she poked out her own eyes and gave them to the prince. He immediately converted to Christianity. So the story goes. Yeah. Lucia was given beautiful new eyes by God, even more beautiful than before. And that's why Lucia is the patron saint of vision. Who knew that? So on St. Lucia's Day, the oldest daughter of the household plays Lucia. Early on the morning of December 13th, she dresses in a white gown. Around her waist is a red ribbon in remembrance of the sword that they ran through her. On her head, she wears a wreath of holly of candles in remembrance of the candles that she wore when she brought food to the early Christians in hiding. The oldest daughter brings a tray of sweet saffron buns, gingerbread, and coffee to her parents, as Lucia did for those in need. The other children of the house follow her, also dressed in white. The girls carry lit candles, and the boys wear tall, pointed caps, and they're called star boys. It's a beautiful ceremony. I find it very interesting that a Sicilian saint is so revered in Norway and Sweden. It is believed that the early Christian missionaries brought the stories to the north. Lucia, the name, literally means light. It sounds as if the Festival of Lights that was already celebrated by the pagan traditions was easily adapted to this Christian holy day, so the whole area was easier to convert, which happened a lot during the time of Rome, when they were trying to bring the whole empire together under one religion. They just kind of used the saints and stories about Jesus and kind of just molded them into a lot of the pagan traditions. So it was easy for people to make the transition. One of the traditions shared by many countries is St. Nicholas Day. Although many countries share December 25th as Christmas, they also have another celebration day, which is December 6th, the holy day of St. Nicholas in the Catholic calendar. He is the national saint of Russia and of Greece. Churches named after him number in the thousands, more than 400 in Great Britain alone. St. Nicholas was born in the Middle East in the 4th century AD. His hometown was Lycia, near the coast of what is now Turkey. He grew up to be the bishop of Myra. The most famous story about Nicholas tells of how he helped 3 unfortunate young sisters. They all had suitors, but they had no dowries, because their father, a poor nobleman, could not raise the money. Because of this, they were not allowed to marry. The Bishop Nicholas was a shy man and did not like to give money directly, so he thought of a way to give it anonymously. When the first daughter was ready to marry, he tossed a bag of gold in the house at night. Later, when the second daughter prepared to marry, she too received a mysterious bag of gold. When the third daughter prepared to marry, the father of the girls was determined to find out who had been so generous. He kept watch and saw the bishop drop another bag of gold into the house. It has been said that St. Nicholas climbed on the roof and dropped the third bag of gold down the chimney. Does this sound familiar? Where it landed in a stocking hung to dry, giving us a reason to hang up our stockings today by the fireplace. When the father saw what had happened, Nicholas begged him to keep the secret, but of course the news got out. From then on, whenever someone received an unexpected gift, they thanked Nicholas. The anniversary of Nicholas's death is December 6th, in either 345 AD or 352 AD. I found 2 different days. 600 years later, the Russian Emperor Vladimir visited Constantinople and heard all the wonderful stories about Bishop Nicholas. and decided to make him the patron saint of Russia. The 3 bags of gold Nicholas gave the sisters made him the focus of merchants in northern Italy. Statues and pictures had shown him holding the 3 bags of gold, and when taken as the patron saint of merchants, the bags of gold became gold balls. Today that represents moneylenders and pawnbrokers, and you'll still see the 3 bags. Considering the Christmas shopping season, I think he still is the patron saint of merchants. About 300 years before the birth of Christ, the Greeks under Alexander the Great were capturing just about all of the known world around the Mediterranean. The goal was, again, to unify the known world then, and all of Alexander's empire was to be unified with one language, one culture, and one religion. And that's why we find so many of the old documents also written in Greek as well as in Hebrew, because that had carried through even to the time of Jesus. Where am I? Alexander knew he was dying, and he called his most trusted officers together and divided up his kingdom between them. Antagonists of Macedonia, the Ptolemies of Egypt, and you might have heard one of their descendants, their name was Cleopatra, and the Seleucids of Syria. From the Seleucid family, Antiochus IV Epiphanes was the king of Syria and was the overlord of the state of Judea around 165 BCE. Do you all know what BCE stands for?
Before the Common Era.
Before Common Era. They've changed it to, actually, instead of AD, it's CE, Common Era. And so anything, it used to be BC, is now before Common Era. Thank you. So, BCE. They were determined to destroy the Jewish faith, to unify all of the empire, and so outlawed the study of the Torah under penalty of death. You all know what the Torah is, right? The holy book for the Jewish people. The study of the Torah is central to the life of the nation of Israel. To not study the Torah was and still is considered a sin against God. This had a galvanizing effect in Israel, for the study of the Torah went underground and became even increased in study. In its efforts to eradicate Judaism, the Greeks also defiled the temple in Jerusalem. Now to have their temple desecrated with a statue of Zeus in the middle of it was almost unbearable. Enter the Hasmonean family, who led a revolt that reclaimed Jerusalem from the Greeks 3 years later. Its leader, Judas, became known to history as Judas Maccabeus. Judas's forces beat back the armies of Antiochus IV and reclaimed the temple in Jerusalem. When it was time to rededicate the temple, they could only find one vessel of oil to burn at the altar that had been desecrated. There were 8 days of celebration and dedication planned, so they lit the lamp of oil, and it miraculously burned for 8 days. It was remembered for this miracle, and that became the celebration of Hanukkah, which means dedication. So these are just a few of the different celebrations that you may find. Let me ask you this: is there some kind of special celebration that you all do that's kind of a cultural one in your families? Anybody have one that's just very special, or something that was brought over from Europe or from another country?
Well, we celebrate 12th night, which not everyone does.
What is that? Tell me about it.
So the 12 days of Christmas, begin on Christmas Day, and then you go 12 days, and then on that day, you're celebrating Three Kings Day, where you give gifts.
Right.
And this is very common in Puerto Rico and Mexico, south of the border, and in a lot of places around the world, where it's a bigger gift-giving day than Christmas Day. Christmas is the birth of Christ. The Three Kings Day, when they brought gifts, is the 12th night.
Okay.
And the reason why it's so celebrated is it's a day that our Jewish friends recognize, our Muslim friends recognize, and our Christian friends recognize. is that day. So we all get together for that party. And we can celebrate our own traditions ourselves and be together and still celebrate that day.
Oh, great, that's
It still has
wonderful.
a tradition across faith.
Okay.
Does
That's
that, does that line up with the, I have a Russian friend and, sorry, I'm having commentary running through my head. I have a Russian friend and she said that it is sometime at the beginning of January is the big day that they celebrate the gift giving. That would be 12th.
Yeah, 12th night, or Three Kings Day, or
Okay, cool.
Back when it's hard.
That's neat. I mean, I just love hearing all these different traditions because I was just kind of, born in the United States and kind of went through all the English style of Christmas and all of that. But I know there's so many others, so many other ways. Anybody else have another tradition that they use in their family? Something else that comes up at Christmas time? You can always start a new tradition too. I remember I was talking one time, and I said, when I came down here, I had no family in Atlanta. So I would just go around church and find people that didn't have family around Atlanta and invited them over and to celebrate Christmas. So it was just a time to get together and create a family. Or I even did some potlucks at church, and everybody just joined in. Again, they didn't have family here. So there's always ways of coming together and finding, developing a new family, or just getting people, they don't have anybody else here, so come on over. I had one lady who had just been burned out of her apartment, and she and her son came over, and my mother had just moved to town. And I had all mom's stuff, I had all my stuff, and so we had duplicates of everything. And so we just took her over to the storage unit we had and just told her, take whatever you need. And she almost was in tears. She said, this is better than the stuff that got burned. And on Christmas morning, she called me. And she said there was a neighbor that they had that is gay. And because he was gay, his father refused to have him in the house. And they said, would you mind if we brought him over to your house for Christmas? I said, bring him on. What a delightful young man. He was funny, he was entertaining. We just had a blast with him. And I thought, that poor father is really missing, number one, missing your son. But so what? This is just who he is. And this young man just made our Christmas. And so you just never know who you might latch on to and find a story of how we can get connected with each other and just celebrate. There's lots of ways of celebrating and just having the courage to do it. So I know people that you kind of miss the way you had it in your family when you were a child, but it's time to start doing things differently. There's lots of ways of celebrating Christmas. Just know that you have the ability to do it, and you know that you'll have a lot of support when you just step out and start connecting with people. And I always like to hear a new tradition and find out another way of celebrating it. So as we go through the month of December, that's what we'll be talking about, the celebrations and the joys that you can find in finding new ways of celebrating Christmas.